Story 1. Civil asset forfeiture. You can be suspected of a crime, and everything they think is connected can be taken even if they do not charge you with a crime. If you think it is completely insane, that is because it is. Story 2. This may be unique to my city. A first driving under the influence offense is a misdemeanor, while sleeping off intoxication in your car is a felony. Story 3. You cannot gamble in casinos, drink, or smoke until you are 21, but you can go to war at 18. Story 4. In several states, minors can legally get married, including children as young as 14, and even younger in a few states if a judge and the parents approve. But those same minors cannot vote, cannot sign contracts, cannot get a tattoo, and cannot buy a lottery ticket. Story 5. I do not understand why it is not illegal to drive with an animal on your lap. Story 6. Paying someone for sex is illegal, but if you film it with the intent to distribute, it's okay. Story 7. I am confused about why the Bill of Rights says certain things shall not be infringed, yet they are infringed on rather frequently. Story 8. Civil asset forfeiture. Police can take your cash, car, or other property on suspicion that it is connected to a crime, usually without charging you, and you must fight to get it back. That flips due process on its head and creates perverse incentives when agencies keep some of the proceeds. It also tends to harm people who cannot afford a lawyer because the cost of contesting a seizure of $500 to $2,000 can exceed the value of the property. Story 9. Georgia's giraffe law. What the hell? Let a man tie his giraffe anywhere he damn well pleases. Story 10. No maximum age for politicians. We have people running this country wearing adult diapers. Older people had their time running the country and need to step aside. I propose that no one may run for a new term after the age of 70. A person may run at 69 and complete that term into their 70s, but may not seek another term after turning 70. Story 11. There is no national minimum age for marriage, but you must be 21 to buy cigarettes. Story 12. Gerrymandering is legal in some cases. Police receive immunity for obviously atrocious acts. Story 13. More than 100 cities have banned homelessness, and many have done nothing to address people without a place to live. Story 14. Prostitution is illegal. I can pay someone to paint my house, fix my car, walk my dog, babysit my kids, cut my hair, do my taxes, treat my injuries, and cook my food, but I can't pay someone to suck my dick? Story 15. You can die for your country at 17 with parental permission, but you cannot drink, smoke, get a tattoo, vote, or buy a lottery ticket at that age. Story 16. I cannot own more than 6 sex toys. I do not own any and do not care to. But why does it matter? Who is keeping count? Why 6, and what is wrong if someone owns more than 6? Laughing out loud. Story 17. In many places, you cannot collect rainwater. I still have no idea why that would even be a thing. Story 18. It used to be that marijuana was illegal while alcohol and nicotine were perfectly legal, even though they seem to have worse effects. Story 19. Not necessarily a law, but rather the lack of laws that protect homeowners from squatters. Story 20. Asset forfeiture, especially when it is applied prior to a conviction, undermines the principle of innocent until proven guilty. Story 21. When 2 trains meet on the same track, neither can proceed until the other has passed. Story 22. I have to wear a seatbelt in my 8,000-pound sport utility vehicle that has anti-lock brakes and 22 airbags. But if I want to ride a motorcycle, I do not even need to wear a helmet. Story 23. Squatters' rights. Laughing my ass off. You do not own that house. You fucking parasite. Get out. Story 24. Resisting arrest as a standalone charge makes no sense. To be charged with resisting arrest, you must be in the process of being arrested for another crime. If no other charges exist, you cannot resist a non-existent arrest. Story 25. Qualified immunity. It may not be a law, but it is a legal doctrine. Story 26. The Citizens United decision is one of the biggest turning points in undermining the country. Many people do not know about it. Story 27. Democracy usually works like this. The people elect their representatives. Only in America can the representatives select their voters. The whole country says there is nothing you can do. Story 28. I am not sure if this qualifies as a law, but I have a problem with people going to jail for felonies. They are stripped of their constitutional rights for life. When they serve their sentences, they are told they have repaid their debt to society, served their time, and are free to go. If they have done their time and repaid their debts to society, why are they still not able to vote or own firearms? It makes no sense. Story 29. Eminent domain is the idea that the government can decide it has more right to property you own than you do, and can force you to give it up with whatever it deems to be just compensation. It boggles my mind. Story 30. How is lobbying not a crime? It is literally legal corruption. Story 31. Even if you no longer work or live in the United States citizens still owe taxes. In other countries, people usually pay taxes where they earn income, but the United States continues to tax a portion of its citizens' income. Story 32. Federal employees cannot strike and do not have labor protections. Story 33. Lobbying has been legal for many years. Why should corporations or groups with money have more say than United States citizens? Story 34. Tax exemptions for religious organizations amount to government subsidies. Story 35. Electoral college. It is legal to influence policy through cash, such as donations or lobbying. Story 36. How you can run for office as a convicted felon but cannot vote if you are one. Story 37. In the United States, according to Nix versus Hedden, 1893, tomatoes are legally classified as a vegetable. Absolutely bonkers. Story 38. Atheists are not allowed to be elected to public office in several states. That is probably indefensible under federal law, but it is rarely challenged. Story 39. So-called jaywalking. Everyone else calls it crossing the road. Seems like the ultimate pretext to stop someone. Story 40. Generally, the legal system fails individuals. If a bank makes a mistake in my favor, I must return the money immediately or I could go to jail. Bank of America, on the other hand, can take money from customers and later pay back only a fraction, often after a decade of court proceedings and court officials acting as if they are important. Story 41. Jaywalking. I am a grown man. I can cross the street just fine, thanks. Story 42. Not the United States as a whole, but California's law that prohibits people from presenting any form of identification when voting seems bonkers to me. Story 43. The fact that you cannot be a felon to vote for a certain office, yet you can be a felon and still hold that office. Story 44. As a non-American, jaywalking literally does not exist here. Why can an adult not simply decide to cross the road when it is safe? It is silly. Story 45. Securities and Exchange Commission Rule 10b, 18 made stock buybacks legal. This is one reason companies say they lack funds for raises or workplace improvements, even when they report record profits year after year. How can a company pay workers fairly when it must artificially inflate its value by buying its own stock? Story 46. Not being able to drink until 21. You can go to war at 18 but not drink. How does that make sense? At 18 I could drink, then the law changed and at 19 I could not drink in a restaurant with my husband. Story 47. A homeowner can be sued or prosecuted if a burglar is injured while breaking into their home. For example, an unpermitted fence or a deteriorated roof that causes the burglar's injury can expose the homeowner to legal action. That is surprising. Story 48. How someone can be convicted of 34 felonies and face no penalties whatsoever. Story 49. Alcohol is one of the most damaging substances to the body, yet it is federally legal to consume at 21 and socially acceptable. Cannabis and other substances are much less harmful but remain federally illegal. Story 50. With laws being selectively enforced or often not even used as the basis for law enforcement actions these days, I do not know that it really matters anymore. Story 51. Taxes. We should all pay the same percentage of income. Make billionaires donate once a year on April 14th the same percentage instead of donating to ballrooms and military salaries. Story 52. Did you know it is illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church? Story 53. In some states, it is illegal to feed the homeless, and in others, it is even illegal to be homeless. Homelessness is largely the result of a failed system, so how can a person who was failed by that system be held responsible for its failures? Story 54. Government shutdowns seem evil. They weaponize pain and suffering. Story 55. Qualified immunity and civil forfeiture by the police. Story 56. There are states where child marriage is legal or where rape victims are forced to carry their rapists' babies. It is so backward there. Story 57. There are many ridiculous laws in the United States. Examples. In Kentucky, women are not allowed to walk down the street in a swimsuit unless they weigh less than 42 kilograms, more than 92 kilograms, or are armed. In Vermont, giraffes may not be attached to telephone poles. In South Dakota, it is illegal to fall asleep in a cheese factory. In South Carolina, you must carry a firearm to Sunday church services. In North Carolina, a hurricane must not cross state borders. In New Jersey, men are prohibited from knitting while fishing. In California, it costs $500 to detonate a nuclear weapon. In Alabama, in Lee County, selling peanuts after sunset is prohibited. Cashews are allowed. In Waynesboro, Virginia, women are not allowed to drive on main roads. In Tennessee, women may drive only if a man runs ahead waving a red flag to alert other road users. In California, drivers traveling at 65 miles per hour or more may not jump out of moving vehicles or wear bathrobes while doing so. In Denver, black cars are not allowed to be driven on Sundays. In Georgia, spitting from a moving car or bus is prohibited, although truck drivers are allowed to do so. If you tie an elephant to a parking meter, you must pay the appropriate rate for a car. In Massachusetts, carrying a gorilla as a passenger can result in a fine if stopped by the police. Story 58. Someone with a felony conviction can become president, while others with similar convictions cannot even get a job at a gas station or at McDonald's. Story 59. Open container laws are unnecessary. It is already illegal to drink and drive. We do not need another law. Let the passengers enjoy a cold one. Story 60. Your unusually strict drinking laws. Why is the minimum age 21 and not 18? Story 61. My state is setting up a permit system to buy firearms. A right you have to ask permission to exercise is not a right. That is a privilege. It is no wonder that many people obtain them illegally. Story 62. In California, if you rent an apartment to someone and they do not pay rent, you cannot evict them. Squatters are a headache, and the laws protecting them are confusing. Story 63. Win the lottery or go on a game show and win a prize. Now you pay tax on it. My American friends were shocked when I explained that if I won the lottery in Australia, I would pay no tax. The winnings would be all mine. The Internal Revenue Service has its hands out in the United States. Story 64. The president has immunity and unlimited power. It is not actually law, but it is playing out that way. Story 65. I think it's ridiculous that you can get a driver's license at 16, and trusting those young drivers with the lives of everyone they share the road with. Yet, the 16-year-old child of a person opposed to vaccination cannot be trusted to make medical decisions for their own safety. I don't necessarily think teenagers should be able to make all their own healthcare decisions, but should they be allowed to decide on simple things like a coronavirus disease 2019 vaccine? Story 66. Knife size limitations. I can carry a gun, but a large blade is a bit too much. Story 67. Being arrested for resisting arrest when that is the only charge. Story 68. In some states you cannot buy alcohol on Sundays, as if hangovers have a moral schedule. Story 69. I am not in favor of checkpoints for driving under the influence, but how this is legal is beyond me. Story 70. Homestead laws. If I want to make meals for homeless people, whose business is it? I am not selling the food or advertising as a professional. I am just making burgers on a grill in the park and giving them to people who would not otherwise get a hot meal. Fuck off. Story 71. How being a convicted felon can affect your right to vote for the President of the United States but not your ability to serve as president. Story 72. The age of consent varies across the country, ranging from 16 to 18. If individuals are minors, should it not be 18 in all states? Story 73. The federal budget should be balanced to get the national debt back on track. If our elected officials cannot figure it out, they should not be eligible for re-election. Watch how fast things change. Story 74. The fact that Tennessee essentially made homelessness illegal. Shaking my head. Story 75. Any law restricting private businesses from operating on Sundays or any other day. Story 76. The United States Supreme Court ruled that a president cannot be held criminally liable for actions taken while acting in office. Story 77. Cannot be trusted with a beer until 21. Can be trusted with a gun at 18. Story 78. Any of the blue laws. No buying alcohol on Sunday in Mississippi. Wait until 10 a.m. to buy alcohol in Massachusetts. Come on. Story 79. You cannot shorten the barrels on your firearms, but you can still own weapons that would cause European nations to go into lockdown. Story 80. In Texas, you are not allowed to lasso a fish. How and why? Story 81. The abortion ban in so many states. Keep religious interference out of the medical system. Story 82. Biking with cars. I have biked a lot in Asia, and bicycles are often on the pavement or grouped with pedestrians. It makes no sense to force them to ride with vehicles that can be dangerous. It is like building a motorway side by side with a railway and expecting the train to yield to cars whenever possible. Story 83. Not exactly a law, but it is handled like one. The Senate filibuster. Story 84. The drinking age being 21 is utter nonsense. Either you are an adult at 18 or you are not. Story 85. Property tax is levied on assets that have already been taxed. You are not allowed to own the property. You are only renting it from the government. Story 86. Any law that specifically places another nation's interests above our own. Story 87. The entire concept of the United States is no longer relevant in 2025. Let us retire it and allow the existing states to govern themselves. Story 88. It's crazy that you can go to war, go to prison, and vote, but you can't drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes. Story 89. There used to be no income tax. Why am I being taxed for working hard when 1 out of 8 people in the United States is on some form of government assistance? Story 90. Corporations are treated as human beings with all the same rights. Right up until it will cost them. Lobbying. What the fuck? No, officer, it was not rape. It is a forced snuggle. Just because it has a new name does not change what it is. Story 91. Gun laws. This is not necessarily about the right to own guns. That can be debated, and I realize it is valued by many people in the United States. It is about the range of firearms allowed and the fact that silencers can be difficult or impossible to own legally. Silencers are essentially safety devices. If firearms are permitted, there should be sensible laws regulating them. Story 92. In my state, buying marijuana at a legal dispensary in another state and bringing it back is illegal, even though my state has legalized it. Story 93. If I am not mistaken, there is a law that prohibits fishing while riding a giraffe in one of the states. Story 94. Common sense gun laws. Many of our laws were created by people with zero firearms experience. Much of it honestly revolves around what looks scarier to the uninformed. Story 95. People arrive in the United States of America without permits, remain there, and demand to be treated as United States citizens. Story 96. Going topless on a beach is totally normal and legal in many parts of the world and under the state laws I am familiar with. Story 97. After seeing the last few months, I have concluded that all laws in the United States are subject to the whims of a madman and do not seem to have any real weight when it matters most. Story 98. As a German, why is having an open container in a car a problem? If I am sober, what does it matter if I have 20 bottles of alcohol in my car? Let me take a breathalyzer. Why do police in the United States require field sobriety tests, such as walking a straight line and other maneuvers, instead of allowing you to simply blow into the device? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.